Let's go to a specific individual. One of the most prominent figures who brings up this conversation, R. Kelly.
Exactly. Yeah, knew it.
One of the most prominent. But we have some others. But we'll start with R. Let me go to G Snow. Can you separate his art? I kind of know your answer, but can you separate his art from him? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to yet another episode of The Last Talk Show. We're getting kind of controversial. We're getting kind of woke, as some people may say, and we have to dive into topics that some don't want to talk about. As you've seen, I try to stay neutral, but Pointer, everyone has a take. I need you to understand that, audience. Everyone has a take, because if you don't have a take, you don't have a voice. And if you don't have a voice, you don't exist. Was that Plato? Was that Socrates? No, that was Ashton Kutcher in the film Vengeance. But at any rate, we're here ready to discuss a very controversial topic, and I don't want to beat around the bush. We're going to talk about separating the art from the artist. Can it be done? Can it not be done? And it's a very controversial topic, especially today with some of the artists that we have. But even going back to, I would argue, 100 years ago, kind of literally, we're going to talk about a figure. But I want to introduce these two legends to the right of me. One you've seen before, but one I'm so excited as a brother in Christ. He's here today. Brother Greg Snowden. Greg Snowden, I want you to look in that camera and tell them about you.
Hi, my name is Greg Snowden, and like Pointer said, I'm a brother in Christ. I'm here to take up the idea of, can the art be separated from the artist? And I'm looking forward to getting into that discussion.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have, I call him G Snow because we're from the hood, but G Snow, I'm so excited to have him here. And then let's swing to Malik. Malik, it's been a few minutes since we've seen you. Tell them, catch them up. How you doing?
Oh my God, how you doing? Oh, you guys, please, chill. Let me just answer this question. I've been doing great. My name is Malik Kendall. Most people call me Cheeks. He refuses to. And I'm an actor. Been acting since I was around 5 years old, professionally since I was like 16. I roller skate, love to travel and just to really get to know people. I like to have conversations like this, so this is a great platform.
It's a beautiful thing. It really is. And we're about to dive in. I'm ready to dive in. No more beating around the bush, as the kids say. Let's go to our first question. And I will start with Brother G Snow. When people say separate the art from the artist, let's just give that basic groundwork. What do they mean when they say separate the art from the artist?
Well, as far as I can tell, they mean to infer that whatever that artist produces in some ways have no connection with the one that produced it. So the artist could sing a song with particular lyrics that might be distasteful, but then someone might say, well, that's just the song, those are just the lyrics, and they have nothing to do with the artist.
Very good. Malik, with that in mind or with that not in mind, what is your thoughts on, what does that mean when people say separate the art from the artist? Do you agree? Do you concur? Or is it a different take?
I think as with everything, there's a spectrum as far as what people will separate, what people won't, or what people mean to when they say that. You know, that all depends on the person. And so I feel like for the most part, he's right. But I feel like where I might disagree a little bit is where it has nothing to do with them. You know, for some artists, if we're talking lyrics, then, you know, some artists write their lyrics, other artists don't. And artists that write their lyrics, you know, they have a little more responsibility in what they do than the ones that don't.
Okay. Do you know your initial thoughts on that kind of take?
Well, yeah, I'd like to dig into that a little bit more,
Yeah.
You know, that these things are on a spectrum. Whether an artist sings lyrics that were written by someone else or they wrote those lyrics themselves, there's a responsibility. One of the things that I see with this is really working with this word separate, right? Like, what does that really mean? And I think that in an intellectual way, you could say that there could be separations made, but the thing that I'll probably harp on is this idea of responsibility. to put something out there into this construct that we call the world, and to bear no responsibility for it, I think is something that I'd like to dig into.
Well, let's start to dig. Let's just go with the most obvious question, what some may call, I don't want to offend anyone, so I won't say elephant in the room, I'll say large body of some sort of mass that we can't see.
Mastodon.
You can say elephant. You didn't mention that to a person.
You could have said woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they are extinct, so that might offend their cut. Okay, let's answer the question. Should we separate the art from the artist? Simple yes or no. Greg Snow, G Snow, should we separate the art from the artist? Yes or no?
No, not in today's culture.
Okay, and we're going to get to the why in just literally seconds. And Malik, just yes or no, should we separate the art from the artist?
I say yes, whether it's today or the past culture.
So why do you feel we should not separate the art from the artist?
Well, much like we shouldn't separate that nice hair from your head. It's an inseparable
I've
thing.
done
It's
that.
like
My hair,
those.
but it's my
I've done that. I have
Anyway,
separated
yes.
the hair from his head.
No, I made a comment about in today's culture, and I think that it's because we know more, right? So in the same way that we are so quick to silence voices, right? That shows that we have a knowledge that what you produce to the world matters. What you say, if a mere word is something that can be considered offensive to the point where the culture at large, news media, everyone is going, oh, we have to stop this from being said. Did you hear what Kanye said? Right? He said some things that were, that got him banned.
True.
Right. And so, and that hasn't just happened with him.
Right.
That's happened
We're going to
with
get
other
into some
people.
of these
Right.
characters. Yeah.
And so back to this idea of the responsibility. We know too much now. We know too much now, which this is how we get language like this. Why give them a platform? Why do people get upset when they say, why give them a platform?
Right.
Because we know on the other end that platform is providing some sort of content that those who are pushing back against say is unfavorable and should not. They're literally saying this content, what this person is saying or doing, should not be disseminated into the culture.
Your thoughts?
I don't know what
As you also
disseminated
answer-
means. I ain't go to college.
Distributed.
I was about to say
Thank you.
Put
broken
out there.
down.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. What's your question?
As you answer,
Yeah.
so your thoughts on that, but as you answer the question of why should we be able to, or why can we separate the art from the artist?
I think, wow, this has so many layers. I think when it comes to separating the art from the artist, you have the art in music, you have art in movies, you have art in paintings and all these other things like that. And I think specifically when your art when the production of the art has to do with so much more than just an individual, then the art is a culmination of all of those individuals' vision kind of thing. So, when you have a movie and your main character or the main actor is a piece of shit, then, a lot of the stuff that they're saying in the movie, a lot of the things, the message that they're portraying in there has nothing to do with their visual, their views, their anything like that. Talk about the movie Django or something like that, where you have the reverse, where you have someone like Leonardo DiCaprio saying the hard R and all that and everybody on set being like, no, that's not who this individual is. They don't believe these things. This is just a character that they're playing. I think the inverse is also true, where if you have a person who plays a great person on TV who is, well loved, their character is beautiful and all this other, that doesn't excuse them from being a piece of shit. I think that separation is what ultimately makes art art.
Your thoughts on that?
No, I think he's very well said. Very well said.
Appreciate you.
And I can agree that I'll just put this out here.
Yeah.
There can be intellectual separation. So it's like I'm not arguing from the point of what you're speaking about, which is like it's intellectual property. So even like whatever an artist might choose to embody or represent, it wasn't produced by that individual. So intellectually, we can reason as like, well, they didn't produced that, they allowed it to be expressed through them. So I'm not arguing from a point of an intellectual separation. Really, it goes back to this idea of, with the knowledge that we have now, and Dave Chappelle is probably like a good example of this.
Okay.
When he realized the expressions that he was allowing to be embodied through him, he said, you know what, I'm going to back off. I'm going to stop doing this. And $50 million, it's like, oh man, it's like he separated himself. It's like, I don't want to be this step and fetch it. I don't want to be this individual, because he realized that his art had a powerful voice. And so my continued position is that we know that now. And so the same way that we will shame an individual because they have allowed themselves, like, how could you play such a role and make us look such a way? And somebody might be like, hey, you know, it's just like, I'm just the artist and it was just a paycheck. But some people are now, and again, it's this time period, I think more than others, are attaching the morality piece to art.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where, you know, I think it gets, you know, extra layers. Like, what are you willing to put into this world, and also to have responsibility for that. And so, you know, I'll say that, and then I'll just, for the win, you cannot spell art without artist.
What?
Yeah, he's right. You cannot spell the word artist without art.
Okay, that's not what he said.
I know.
Yeah, and the inverse is true. Like the word art and artist is like, you know, they go together, right? So it's like you have artists, and so it's like, can you take art? It's like you won't have art.
You're
okay. That last part threw me for a minute, but I will say that I agree when it comes to certain. How do I play it? When it comes to certain, platforms and what they put out there, specifically when it comes to things like comedy, where, you know, I'm a huge comedy fan. I love Dave. I love people like Mike Birbiglia. I love John Mulaney. I love Eddie Griffin. Crazy, raunchy, amazing people. Anthony Jeselnik. All these other comedians. And I think where comedy is, I feel like comedy is such a personal art form, to where it is the perfect marriage between art and artist, where I think it would be safe to say that most of, if not everything that a comedian says, of what a comedian says, is what they believe. Outside of, especially, what's it called? If you're up there saying something very hateful with hateful intent, I don't know a comedian out there that said something that is meant hateful and then later on been like, wait, no, that was a character that I was playing on stage. This, and this.
But you might be leaning towards his point more of saying, like a Chappelle, who was making jokes about trans people.
Right.
And that's why they were so quick to cancel him. Because
Yeah.
it's like, we can't separate that. You're making a joke, but you kind of mean it.
Yeah.
You know, because he even said, I'm a TERF.
Yeah.
You know, a trans exclusionary radical feminist. Right?
Okay.
Because he supported J.K. Rowling.
Okay.
And that's why they were so quick to cancel. Because it was like, well, your comedy is art, Dave,
Yeah.
but you're also the artist, and we're backing it. So comedy may be a genre where it's kind of like leaning towards like, yeah, well, you can't separate them.
Because, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so
you're saying comedy is an outlier in this discussion?
I think with every rule, with every like stance, with everything, there are the outliers, there are the exceptions to it. And I think I'm willing to say that comedy might be one of those things, if not the only one.
Where it just needs to be, even if it's kind of what could be seen as harmful to a group, still that they're an outlier. Let them slide?
No, I'm saying they're an outlier as far as hold them to what they say, because more times than not, that's what they believe.
Oh, so you're saying be more quick to cancel them?
No, not necessarily more quick to. I say always, when it comes to canceling, when it comes to things, don't be more quick to cancel, be more quick to understand, to try to figure out exactly why these people have said this. Because a lot of times, like comedians, every comedian I know are one of the most like depressed, hard lives people that I've ever met. And stuff like that. And so, you know, a lot of the times their stances come from a very hurt, not healed place, especially the ones that end up hurting.
Let's I feel you. Let's kind of transition so we don't lean, because we're getting to some specific people where I think the conversation will blossom more outside of comedy. I actually don't have any comedians listed because I feel that you can't really separate a comedian from their jokes. And that's when they end up getting canceled. And a lot of the times the comedians will stand their ground.
I will say, yes, they will. Very,
which is, I don't blame them.
Very prideful people, though. So that's, even if they think that they're wrong, a lot of comedians won't do it because then it opens the door for other comedians who might not.
And that would, well, we're not going to go.
But that's not what I was about to say. I was going to say that there are times where comedians will say something and won't realize that it is putting out this hateful thing, or they don't mean it in a hateful way. And even in their special or, in their set, that they don't mean it in a hateful way. But people who do mean it in a hateful way will latch on to that will latch on to that point and will try to make it a huge thing. And that's what racists did with slavery, with the Bible.
You're all in my park, because like all of your argument is morality based.
But that's with comedy. I'm saying with comedy, I'm with you.
Yeah,
but you like to go across the board, though.
Well, I mean, I think that you have to measure equally, because it's content, and so whether my content is in the form of humor, or if my content is in the form of lyrics, or if my content is in the form of a dramatic performance, I read that. I read that script. I knew what the script was. I knew what I was about to depict. I knew what I was about to sing. Like, I knew the feelings that it could potentially evoke. And that's why I'm saying where we are now, that, this idea of separating the art from the artist is like, man, you just can't do it, because the culture is crying out and saying, no, you can't do it. It's literally being offended on at like every turn when you put out any content that doesn't meet the culture's stamp of approval. And then, who is determining that right now? That's, that's another conversation.
True.
But like when you use the language hate, like that a group of people have won the ability to frame the argument in such a way that if this is said, then we get to say that that's hate. It's like, wait a minute, who gave you guys the rules of the game? Like, where did we agree that there are certain things that, this is considered hate and this is not?
Right.
Like, I missed that meeting. It's just like there's this one playbook that if you violate the rules of this playbook, it's considered a particular thing, such as hate. And you can have somebody that's like a Mother Teresa. And she's like, you know what? I'm not a hateful person. Right, like, I love the babies. Right. But I have a different point of view. Yeah. And so, but I digress, because the idea is that we're punishing content. Content is not producing itself. It's just not, well, now with AI, that's a whole other story. But content is not just, expressing itself. People are allowing themselves to be the vehicle through which these expressions are being, whether it be comedy or any other thing. And so I think that, in a moral sense, like, absolutely not. I think that, ignorance of the law is no excuse. If these people say, well, I didn't know, it's like, not in 2023, you knew.
I think the separation of it when it comes to these different platforms is, one, the ultimate message that's being sent out there. If we're talking about reading a script and we're saying, I know my character says this, this, and this, and all this other stuff, there are movies out there that had to do with like slavery, that had to do with bigotry, that had to do with all these other really horrible things. And some of these people, played these characters that were for the bigotry, for the hatred of it, but they understood that their role in it was to ultimately tell a progressive story. You had people in like the movie Hidden Figures where, they were against women, black women being scientists and all this other stuff. And you had to have the people who were against them and who, people who were playing cops and who would pull them over and do all this stuff. But they understood that the only way to tell this story was to tell the story of what was, truly happening. And so the person that is playing the cop in that instance and doing these horrible things, they understood that the only way to show the rest of the world this very positive thing, which was, black women are geniuses, was for them to play this role. And I think that the ultimate difference of these platforms is, you know, when it comes to a comedian, it's them most of the time, you know, the vast majority of the time, them writing down their thing, saying what they believe, and they're the only one that it goes through, the only one that it really affects outside of, you know, their team. But when you have a movie, when you have lyrics, when you have things like that, a lot of times you, those platforms of art have the almost filter of what the deeper meaning of it is.
Let's go into the person. I'll skip a
please,
question because that kind of leads us into, let's get specific then. So you're saying comedy's the outlier, if you will, but music isn't, film isn't. You gave a great example of film.
Okay.
Let's go to music then.
Okay,
let's go to
please.
a specific individual. One of the most prominent figures who brings up this conversation, R.
No,
Kelly.
exactly. Yeah, knew it.
One of the most prominent. But
Yeah.
we have some others. But we'll start with R.
Yeah.
Let me go to G. Snow. Can you separate his art? I kind of know your answer, but can you separate his art from him?
I like this.
I think that for him as an artist, as far as I can tell, the things that he produced seemed to be stories of his life. Like his content seemed to be like stuff that he was putting out there, things that he was doing. And so for him as an artist, I think very specifically, probably know that you
can't separate it.
Yeah, no, it's like he was, all the In the Closet, series and all those different things. I think that, he was telling stories.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. Yeah. I can't say that for sure because sometimes, people embellish these things and make these things up.
But to your, I'm saying neutral, but to that, and Malik's about to give a quick response. I'll just speak quickly because when we found out why he's in jail, and some of those things that he was singing about, it appears he was doing them. So you're not wrong. With him, it wasn't all embellishment. Now, the Trapped in the Closet, I don't know the details if a midget, if he was actually having, well, I can't say that nowadays. Little person. Bryce, I don't want to get canceled. Little person. I don't know those details, but in terms of him, what he's in jail for, that was proven that was true.
Yeah.
So Malik, now I just wanted to throw that in neutrally. Yeah. So Malik, your thoughts on the R?
On the R?
I'm sorry.
I've never heard it called that. That's crazy. All right. So when it comes to R. Kelly specific, I do say we can separate the art from the artist, specifically because when it comes to music, whatever they're singing about doesn't necessarily mean that's what I'm singing about. When you have people like Teddy Pendergrass singing about, wanting to love, this specific girl, Luther Vandross saying, I want to love this girl. When I sing those songs, I'm not talking to the girl that he's talking to. I'm not singing to the girl that he's singing to. I'm talking to whoever I'm talking to. And where I say separate the art from the artist, when it comes to R. Kelly, I say Robert is a piece of shit. Don't him, never will. And when it comes to his music, he's singing to, I believe that he's singing to, 16, 14-year-old little girls. If I sing his songs, I'm not singing to those girls. I'm not hearing it from that necessarily perspective. I'm not associating that with me in the slightest. At any cookout, when I'm singing Step to the Name of Love and I'm not singing that from a perspective of loving a child in the slightest. And I hope that, my uncles, my aunts, the people that we're in the line dance having fun, that none of them are too. And I think R. Kelly specifically, when it comes to the Black community, we all have this really interesting soft spot for him and Bill Cosby.
But he was on here.
Yeah. And I think it's a little strange to be able to separate, A Step to the Name of Love versus being able to separate I can't even think of another example of a person.
I get it. We're going to have more, but let me see G. Snow's response.
As I was listening to you, I was thinking about the Confederate flag. And The reason why I was thinking about this is, okay, content that's produced. R. Kelly produced some particular content, and he meant a particular thing when he produced it, right? But if someone subsequent comes and uses that content under another context, then that person is somehow different, right? There's a difference there. And my thought was like, okay, let's take this Confederate flag, as a piece of content, some material thing that was produced, and it had, very specific idea when it was made.
Right.
But let's say that some person comes later on and they're like, oh, I like this flag. This is such a nice flag. I'm just gonna put it on my house because it go with my petunias. My petunias just got the colors and stuff, and I like all that. And so you see it on their house, and you like, hey, it's like you flying this Confederate flag. It's just like, this means, something, something, something. And they're like, no, it don't. It just go with my petunias. It's like, I'm not, and so this idea of trying to like use the same content with, immunity, like it's going to die the death of 1,000 cuts, because somebody's always going to be able to come in there and point to a problem where that piece of content produces some kind of trigger, some kind of issue, and you can't be, well, unless you have a benevolent society, we don't have that right now. Like, you're going to have to be responsible. Like, you can't just fly that flag. You can't use that word. You can't wear those clothes. You can't wear this thing. And so, like, this idea of, again, it just goes back to this thing of responsibility, and an artist now realizing this. And this goes back to for me, like a faith thing and us representing God thing. Like, you can't just do anything with immunity now, because we know. And that's the reason why it's like they're at the end of the day, I know. And it's like, I have a greater responsibility to do my homework, especially if I'm an artist, to find out, am I about to alienate? Am I about to offend? Am I about to hurt? And if that's your goal as an artist, I mean, you have that right. But I think that, in the society, we're really not trying to get behind the voices of those people that are trying to contribute in a negative way to the culture.
Do you think that it's possible to use the same words as somebody without using their voice?
Yes.
And so with that same sentiment, if we're going back to the Confederate flag, the intent behind that was hateful. The intent behind the creation of that was to alienate a people and to promote, hey, we don't with the U.S. specifically because they're trying to free slaves. They're trying to, do that we're not about.
So you're saying R. Kelly's intent was not harmful?
No.
Well, we didn't know that. Like,
not at all. No, I'm not saying that.
What are you saying?
To your point, we didn't know that. Like, all this stuff that we learned about the Confederate flag, we had to learn that.
Correct.
Right? So the same thing with R. Kelly's music. We learned that. And so once something becomes tainted,
I think the difference in that is if R. Kelly was saying in those lyrics, I want to a 16-year-old. I want to be with a 14-year-old. I want to do these things. Because if some weird reality, we didn't know that was a problem when he said that, and then later on we learned that it's an issue to be kids, then yeah, 100%. I think that's when we should, bring those rules and those laws to the future, or I guess bring it to the past in that instance. But the difference in that, at least for me, is that the words that were used weren't hateful. They weren't talking about children. The words that were used, his intent behind it,
that's what I was saying.
Somebody, I can say, somebody can look into somebody else's eyes and be like, I love you. And the whole time in their head saying, oh, I love you. I love the way that you look at me. I love the way that you, cater for me and that you do this, that, and the third. But in their head, they're just deceiving. And that's ultimately what I see R. Kelly as, a deceiver. And so when I hear the lyrics of like
Bump and Grind.
Bump and Grind is that's our one too. But when I hear, but that's a great example. I think he's talking about a 12-year-old. If I'm singing it and if I'm hearing it, I'm not associating his intent with the words that he's saying, because ultimately I see nothing wrong with a little bump and grind. The problem with that is when you associate bump and grind with the 12-year-old.
And why would that be a problem?
Huh?
Why would that be a problem?
Because it's not cool. It's
Says who?
morals.
Whose
the
morals?
law.
Where do you get those morals from?
I got those morals from
a little too deep
hurting.
now.
No, from hurting children.
Where do you get that from, though? It's
From
like, is
science.
that man-made, or is that something that's beyond us?
Both. I think the man-made part is the science behind, when kids are abused as kids, they grow up, messed up.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's a mixture of both, because the science can only discover what's already there.
I agree.
Because he wasn't, of course, supporting that. He's just saying when it comes down to this culture specifically, and so
Okay.
many things are developing and growing as to what we once considered not okay is now considered okay.
Yes.
And they keep pushing the envelope. Sadly, and to your dismay, and Brother Greg and I have already discussed it, there is an organization that supports men loving boys. And they're literally fighting because, as we were just discussing with Rosetta, they say love is love. And in some cultures, you go a few miles over the pond, a lot of miles over, and you have 30-year-old men getting with 12-year-old girls. And that's their culture.
Right.
And don't you dare talk about Muslims. You'll get your head cut off. I'll probably edit this out, but it's the truth. You never see people attack them. They'll attack Christ. They'll attack Judaism, and they're getting more protection now, good, but we Christians get treated like trash. But Muslim, you don't talk about Muslims. I'm going on a tangent. I know you agree with me, but I'm still just saying.
Yeah.
So in other cultures, R. Kelly's music, they literally could have put, I don't see nothing wrong with a 12-year-old girl. Well, that's their culture.
Right.
And we always, even they cancel me for pointer, that's their culture. Be mindful of their culture, though. They can eat a cat if they want. So it's like, so to his point, I'm staying neutral. But we got to be mindful of what we consider moral.
Yeah.
But that's,
Yeah.
But I think
I'm sorry.
ultimately,
Stay neutral.
the thing that defines morality, even beyond laws, is the effect that it has on the humans, on the victim. And so in these other cultures where it's cool to marry off a 12-year-old, the science behind that, the longevity of that comes out that the 12-year-old in question comes out with scars, not feeling loved. And then a lot of times when they do feel loved, it's a lot closer to a cultish mindset where it's, it's a lot more master than husband.
You have a very loving point of view, and see that, as a Christian, where I was going with this idea of morality is, like, before you can say what is right or wrong, you have to first determine purpose, right? So it's just like, what is the purpose of a thing? Once I determine what a purpose of a thing is, and then I can begin to, like, make declarations about this is right and this is wrong. And you spoke to that in a sense where you talked about the dignity that belongs to, like, young women, right?
Okay.
And in the Christian faith, there is all of us created in this image of God, right? And so you get no higher dignity than to be created in the image. And so your person is sacred, your property is sacred. All of these things are sacred from birth, and that, you should not be violated. You should be treated a particular way. So when you start to back all the way up and say, okay, well, what does art have to do with this? Our belief systems contribute or should contribute to what it is that we put in the world. And so it's just like, if my music or whatever else it is I allow to be embodied through me has a butterfly effect of causing an individual to think less of themselves, or to think in a perverted fashion, a fashion that might, stir, let's say, some of that art has, like, now they have these kids, and I don't know if you've seen them, but, some of these little kids dressing up in drag, right? And dancing in front of full grown men. And, like, someone goes, oh, that's art, right? That's art that this little 12-year-old boy is, they got a makeup on and got this dress on. He's dancing around. It's like that shouldn't be. that shouldn't be that. That's contributing to, number one, the perversion of those men that are like watching them and putting ideas in their head, right? And so then when no one is watching, there's this motivation, or can be, where these people take advantage of not just the one that's dancing, but they get ideas in their head, and they think like, wow, you know what? My little neighbor, I have a neighbor that's 12 years old. All these different things. There are contributions that we are making, sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously. The way that we move about in the world, I'm expressing something. Right. If you hear me use particular words,
right,
that is producing a particular kind of energy. Like when you keep using the F word, like, effing kids, it's like there's a harsh energy. Every time you say that, it pierces because it's such an ugly word. And then to say that you're doing that to kids, it's like, ooh, it's like a double push. But the culture is at such a place where almost everybody uses profanity, and they don't think that it has a negative reverberation in the culture.
Yeah. And specifically with that last point, I say kids because it's such a harsh thing. So we use the harsh, not just the harsh word, but the harsh intent behind the word. Because you
want it to sound.
Yes. Yeah.
You want it to pierce.
Use the words that you mean. And so yeah, like I agree that when it comes to things like, kids in drag doing these things in front of, adults and all this other stuff, that isn't, well, I mean, I guess with that, I don't see a way that you could separate art from the artist, because the artist is the art in that sense. But
so I think we're starting to add more of these outliers, because now besides comedy, now we're adding.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, I guess I'm asking a question on where could you draw the line between art and artist if the artist is the art?
And I think that's his point. I think it's like,
but they're not. But I'm saying in other, like, in these things, like, how do I put it? It's almost, how do I put this? It's almost not the term art when they're just being themselves. I think art is an expression of something that is further than you.
An extension.
Right, an extension. And when it comes to that, I think, when you have the, going back to the drag in front of grown men and all that kind of thing. One, I think it's sick that, you have these grown men looking at these kids and wanting to be with them in any way. And I think that I think the problem in that isn't necessarily the drag. I think the problem in that is the sick individuals looking at them with those kind of eyes. Now, I think because we can't live in a world without these, sick individuals, that maybe there should be stipulations on who can and who can't, at what age and what age you cannot, be out there in, half dressed and all that other stuff.
You don't believe that the 12-year-old expressing in drag is in itself a problem? No,
I'm saying because of the world that we live in, it is. Specifically because you have people who will.
So without that, I'm saying without that, if there was a world where that negative element wasn't there, you're saying that an 8, 10, 12-year-old boy dressed up with lipstick on and in a dress and high heels and prancing around, that is not, there's nothing wrong with that?
No, because I don't see how it affects anyone but that 8-year-old.
Okay.
So that's a good.
If we're in a perfect world where there are no pedophiles, where there are no people trying to exploit or use that 8-year-old, if that 8-year-old came into this mindset by themselves, if it wasn't somebody pushing them into doing something that they didn't want to do at first or coercing them into something like that, then
But being
then great.
we gotta wrap up. Sadly, we only have a few minutes left. But being that we're not in a perfect world,
Yeah.
we can't like linger on that point too long. But I will bring up one more person. So the R. Kelly thing, technically, you're still saying separate, and you're saying no.
No.
Let's go. I want this last person. We got to be brief because we got to close out. But J.K. Rowling.
Okay.
Now, J.K. Rowling's art had nothing to do with why she was canceled. They worshipped her for her art.
Yeah.
Yet.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Oh, you don't think they worship?
No,
J.K.
no, no.
Rowling?
Sorry, I'm talking about her art not having anything to do with why she was canceled.
Oh, the Harry Potter. They had didn't they have trans characters in there, gay or at least?
No.
Oh well,
No,
back
none
to
of
the
that.
point I was making.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling was worshipped for her art, yet her comments did not. I don't know who would argue they have to do. How does Harry Potter have to do with trans? So the point I'm making is, it's not for me. I'm saying neutral. I'll probably edit some of that out. Should she have been canceled? Can we separate her art of Harry Potter? Because they were trying to cancel Harry Potter too. It was like cancel Harry Potter because J.K. Rowling said this about trans. We'll go to G Snow first, then Malik, then we gotta end it out.
No, that's really, really good. I hadn't thought about that. And yes, I think that there is the separation from the point of intellectual, in the same way that her books can be considered her intellectual property, right? So something that arose from her mind, and she produced this content, all these books, and fantasy, right? It's a fantasy. This is something that came out of her imagination, out of her talent. But then, to dig into other elements of like who she is, like you can see that there's, like she's not Harry Potter. She's not any of those characters, but the magic and, the wonder, the mystery of all that kind of stuff. It's like it shows the creativity of her, but was she a witch? Is she a warlock? Is she any one of those things? It's like,
Maybe.
no, like I don't think so. So yeah, again, intellectually, there's the separation that can be made, but morally, again, I think we're going to keep coming back to that same point, that there's a responsibility, for the content.
Your final thoughts?
So do you think that because of something that she says, like, she writes this book in the first movie came out in 99, whatever, whenever she wrote the book, do you think that comments that she says later on should reflect on her property that she had way back when?
They have nothing to do. It's like if she said, in the name of Harry Potter, or it's like, through the lens of the Harry Potter book, I make this statement.
Right.
Like those were different categories. It's
Yes.
like, we're complex and we're layered. So
I think that's what
what I mean.
And I get it. That's why I wanted to involve J.K. Now it is a different argument because R. Kelly singing specifically about what he's doing. J.K. was like, this is just fantasy. So why are you canceling my work? Not just me. They literally tried to cancel Harry Potter because you wrote it. So I think that's where we kind of both, almost all three of us agree where that's the true separation.
Yeah.
Because that's just, but then the same argument can be made for Bill Cosby.
How was
Because
that?
on the Cosby Show, he was not anybody on the Cosby Show. He was America's
okay.
dad.
Yeah.
So it's like, but what he did, either before or after, and he probably
Right.
both perv, I hope he burns in hell. But
Facts.
it's still like, the Cosby Show had nothing to do with what he did.
Correct.
Yet they can't, and my grandma loved the Cosby Show. She looked forward to that at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night. It's like they took it off. Is that right? Both of you, is that right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, Dave Chappelle does a joke about,
Oh, yes.
he more than he kills, but it's like, he
Right,
helps.
yeah. I
He
did
helps
hear
and
about
he
that.
hurts. It's like he saves more than.
Dave is crazy.
So, should the content, is the question, should the content be pulled away?
Yeah.
Right.
Because if we're separating art from artists and you're saying we can't, then
Then that's
gotta be
taking away
pulled.
the.
gotta be
So from that angle of if the content does good, it's like, let's let it do good.
Correct. And that's ultimate, and that's what I mean also when it comes to the musical lyrics. That's what I mean when it comes to movies like The Flash and all this other stuff. You have the main character, Ezra Miller. They are horrible people. The mind or lack of mind in that being is sick and weird and shouldn't be on the screen. That's coming from an actor. And I think the product of the movie is something that, one, is a culmination and is a birth of something that had nothing to do with Ezra. And I think canceling the movie or boycotting the movie does everybody else a disservice of people who themselves have come out and said, like, no, Ezra is a weirdo. I don't f with him. Them, my bad. And when they say that, they're still being penalized for the comments and the actions of this individual when this intellectual property had nothing to do with them.
So you're saying association matters?
I'm saying association is what is being like combined. I'm saying it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'm saying it should matter, but I'm saying it should not matter. But as of right now, with a lot of people, it does, and then with other people, it doesn't.
Yeah.
We'll have to stop it there. We could keep going because we have other people that we have that are, aggressors and terrible people. But we'll cut it there. I thank you so much for watching. This was a very healthy discussion.
Yeah.
They didn't get too crazy. They didn't get too crazy,
No,
and that's a
facts. I
sad
respect
thing,
them.
but it's a beautiful thing. So I want you to connect with them because they are both popping and doing great things. Let's start with G Snow.
Poppin's
G
crazy.
Snow, are you comfortable? Do you want to tell people how to find you, or how we doing?
Find you.
You know, I don't really have, too much going where I would say, oh, this
One
is
of
my
these days you
IG.
will.
Yeah, but, after this, you have me next time I come back.
Okay.
I have all of that stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I know.
With that said, real quick, I think if you do anything, I say put it out there. I say if you have anything in the future or the past, if you've had anything in the last 20 years, I say do that. I say, promote yourself because one, you're here and we don't know if we'll be alive tomorrow. We don't know when our legacy will be cut or anything like that. But then also we've done the work to be watched. And so, whatever you have to plug in the future, we don't know the next time we'll be here, if it'll be 5 years from now, if it'll be 50 years from now.
Right.
I say plug yourself now and then let these people see you in real time.
We'll find.
when you do
We'll
put it out
link
there.
it because if he literally doesn't have an Instagram, he doesn't have an Instagram.
Oh, okay. I thought
I do, but just.
I get it.
Yeah,
get it.
I thought you were
Malik,
talking about
tell them how to
content-wise.
find you so we can get to
my
our
bad,
final episode.
folks. So, you can find me on Instagram at cheeks_Kindle. That's cheeks _ Kindle is KINDLE and then 25 at the end. Yeah.
There you go.
I act, I roller skate, I make people laugh.
He does it all. But we thank you so much for viewing, folks. Were you going to say something? Oh, no?
No, I'm good. It's just like, wow, I need to roller skate.
Yeah, it's a
It's
beautiful
beautiful.
thing.
Yeah,
But let's
it's
end out.
great.
I appreciate you so much for watching. Continue to like, subscribe, comment. We'll see you on the next episode of another juicy discussion on the Live Talk Show.
Hi, my name is Little Pointer, and I would really like it if you like, subscribe, and shared. And check out our other videos here, 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 and here. See ya.